Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Bree and I'm so happy to have you guys here. As you may or may not know, April is Autism Acceptance and Awareness Month and I have some book recs for that. Before I get into the book recs, now Autism Acceptance and Awareness Month has a special meaning to me and is a little bit personal because I actually got diagnosed with level 1 autism a little over 2 years ago. I was 30 years old at that time, so I went the first 30 years of my life having no idea that I was autistic, which, that's something. We could definitely go on a super deep dive about that, but maybe another time. But anyway, a few months before I actually got diagnosed, I came across some YouTube videos that kind of got me thinking, like, hey, I relate to that, like, actually a lot. That sounds like my literal life experience. And I kind of fell into a deep dive for several months about autism and the way it can present in females, and yeah, I learned a lot. By the time I was able to get an assessment done, I was 99.99% sure what they were going to tell me. But you can never be sure on your own, or at least I wasn't. I had this nagging doubt in the back of my mind that was like, you could be wrong, you could be making this up. So I went and got the actual assessment done. And here we are. In that time, when I went into my deep dive, I did a lot of internet research. I watched a lot of autistic YouTubers and TikTokers just to kind of get the lived experience of other people who are autistic. And I also bought a lot of books. So around that time, I think the first one I bought out of my stack, So You Think You're Autistic by Samantha Stein. We're going to start out with nonfiction, I guess. Now this one, I bought this book because I discovered Yo Sam D Sam on YouTube. That's one of the first autistic creators I found on YouTube. And I watched a lot of her videos that summer when I was kind of figuring out that I might be autistic. And I learned a lot from her. She made this workbook for people who think they might be autistic. And I mean, it is a workbook. Like, you go through and you're supposed to write your own experiences. You answer her questions. She asks things like, let's talk about your childhood. How do you do with hearing, touch, a lot of sensory things? There's a lot going on in here. I don't think I actually wrote in it. I don't remember why. I went through the whole thing and answered everything in my head, or I think I actually answered on my own paper because I created an entire binder while I was doing this. I made myself my own personal Bree autism workbook that I still have. So anyway, this was a really neat tool at the time. I mean, this one would be if you actually think that you're autistic. I'd recommend checking this out because it was helpful for me, at least. Another one that I bought around the same time that was really helpful for me, I don't remember which YouTuber I found that recommended this one, but it is called Aspergirls by Rudy Simone. And yes, I'm aware that the term Aspergers is no longer used in the clinical setting. However, that's the title of the book. It was written before they changed that, and this one was super helpful for me as well in learning things about specifically women and girls who, at the time this was written, would have been diagnosed with Asperger syndrome. By the time I got diagnosed, that was no longer a diagnosis that you could get, so I was diagnosed with level 1 autism. But if I had gotten diagnosed younger, it would have been more like this. This one was super interesting as well because it really does focus on the way autism at that level tends to present in females. And this one I marked up a lot because every time I found something that I personally really related to, or that it felt like it explained my life, like this could have been about little Bree, I marked the heck out of this. And there's some really cool stuff in this one. I really recommend this one as well if you are or suspect that you're a late diagnosed woman, or even if you're not late diagnosed. And this one, yes, this one is specifically women and girls who would have been diagnosed with Asperger's or now would be diagnosed with level 1. It's not all encompassing, but it was very helpful to me specifically. And it does even have a chart, a list of female Asperger syndrome traits. And I marked that one the heck up too because these were, I saw stuff that I personally had experienced my whole life and I was like, hey, here's my life written in this book that I didn't write, which was a very interesting feeling at the time. So really liked this one, very informative. This one I feel like would also be helpful if you know someone who is diagnosed or self-diagnosed and you just want to learn more about maybe how their mind works. Around the same time, I bought Unmasking Autism by Devon. And I guess disclaimer, most of the books that I have pertain a lot to my personal lived experience. They're not all-encompassing for the entire autism spectrum. A lot of them do get into a lot of it. But the ones that I read, I was specifically trying to learn about myself and my own brain, I guess. So this is only my lived experience, and that includes this one as well. I read this one such a long time ago. I must have found a lot in it. I remember finding a lot in it that I liked. I did tab it up quite a bit, if you can see that. If I'm being honest now, it's been almost 3 years since I read this, so I don't really remember. I was reading a lot about autism and doing a lot of research at the time, so some of it kind of just is muddled together in my brain. It all turned into just one big blob of research. I also did purchase a couple of books that I still to this day haven't read, and I really need to. One of them is Divergent Mind by Jenara Nerenberg. I haven't read this one yet. This one is specifically a study of neurodivergent women. Now that would include like high sensitivity, ADHD, synesthesia, autism included in that as well, but not solely focused on autism with this one. So I really need to read that one. I also own Neurotribes by Steve Silberman. The rest of the title is The Legacy of Autism and the Future of Neurodiversity. This one, I think, takes more of a deep dive into the history. The legacy, so it says, and maybe gets into some other neurological differences. Big chunky book. Haven't read this one yet. I really need to get to that. And I also bought, I don't even remember how I came across this one, but The Complete Guide to Asperger Syndrome, with a new introduction on the DSM-5 diagnostic criteria, which no longer uses the term Asperger syndrome, but they just kind of updated a book that already existed. This one, I also have not read just yet, but it has a lot. It's got a lot in there. I really probably need to check this one out too. That is the extent of my physical nonfiction books about autism. And like I said, most of them focus on what would have been called Asperger syndrome in the past and what is now called level 1 autism, specifically because that is what I was diagnosed with. I want to say a couple of the ones that I haven't read yet might deep dive a little bit into more of the spectrum and be more all-encompassing. And a lot of my internet research I did do that as well. But yeah, most of the books I have were me trying to learn about myself and my own brain. So I in no way whatsoever speak for anybody but myself. Now, after I came out of my deep dive and got my assessment, got diagnosed, all that good stuff, I realized, I probably should have realized this at a sooner point, but there's also fiction with autistic characters, right? Or written by autistic authors, which is so exciting. Interesting Facts About Space by Emily Austin, one of my absolute favorite writers. The main character is not specifically stated to be autistic. However, there is one point in the book where I think her doctor refers her for an autism assessment. I actually couldn't believe how much I related to the main character. Her name's Enid. Just like the way that her mind worked, her relationship with her family, especially her mom, a lot of different things. And so when I got to the part where she got her referral to get an autism assessment, I was like, oh, it all makes sense now. Like it's a very interesting and still really new experience for me to find characters in any type of media that I really, really relate to. And that also goes for finding people in real life that I really, really relate to. It's not something that happens super often for me, so it's really nice when I can find books with characters that I feel like I wouldn't ever have to explain myself to, like the way my mind works or what I'm thinking or what I'm doing, because they're like that too. So that was a really cool experience. I think this might have been the first book that I really felt that in. And next we have Hell Followed With Us by Andrew Joseph White. The author of this book, Andrew Joseph White, is trans and autistic, and there might only be one autistic character in this book, if I'm remembering correctly, but it was really interesting the way that was portrayed in this book, because this is a kind of post-apocalyptic story, so that was super interesting to see an autistic character in, a post-apocalyptic land going through all of that, survival type stuff. So that was really cool. Really recommend this. Terrific writer. I actually have one of his newer books, You Weren't Meant to Be Human. Haven't read that one yet. Super excited about it. When did I read this one? Okay, The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime by Mark Haddon. This one I actually heard about during my autism assessment. There was one point where the guy who was assessing me asked me if I had read this. He was trying to explain a concept to me and then asked if I had ever read this book, and I told him no, because I hadn't at the time. And then we found another way to get to the concept, I think. But after that, I was always curious about this one, so I finally picked it up and checked it out. I want to say it was sometime last year. This one is about Christopher John Francis Boone. He is, does this say how old he is? He was really young. I want to say like 13 to 15. And Christopher is autistic and relates really well to animals, but has a really hard time with people and human emotions. And then a neighborhood dog dies, and he goes into investigation mode to figure out what happened to this dog. This is a really interesting and really touching story. And I really liked this one because I could relate to Christopher in a lot of ways, but then in a lot of other ways I couldn't. So it was really interesting getting to see that lived experience that is in some ways similar, but also very different from mine. And next, that's not in order. Okay. Now, C.G. Drews is also an autistic writer. Where did I read that? Maybe their Instagram profile. I know they've said it. I think their website. But all of their books have autism rep. And in this one, our main character, Evander, I don't know if it's ever explicitly stated in the story itself, I think by the author it was, that Evander is autistic or shows traits of autism. And this one was especially interesting because it's kind of like a botanical horror novel. And if you guys have watched any of my other videos, you know that I love this author. I love their work. I love this book so much. This was my first C.G. Drews novel, and I'm in love with it. I will buy anything and everything that they write. Moving on from that, we have Don't Let the Forest In by C.G. Drews. Now, I'm unsure if anybody in this book is explicitly stated to be autistic again. However, our main character, Andrew, I think shows some traits. This one is also fantastic. I love it so much. And then just a couple of weeks ago, I read their newest book, You Did Nothing Wrong. This one features an autistic child, Jude. I think he is 6 years old. This one is interesting because it is, we don't actually see from Jude's point of view. We see from the point of view of his mother. And we don't hear from Jude a lot either. He doesn't talk much. He kind of communicates with actions. And it's the autistic experience of a 6-year-old boy. So that was super interesting. Also a little bit heartbreaking. I don't want to give anything away with this story. If you've read it, you know why it was heartbreaking. If you haven't, you might just have to read it to find out. Another thing that really got me with this one, in the acknowledgments at the end, it says, if you were once the autistic child, you did nothing wrong. That one hit me really hard, especially right after reading this. If you know, you know. On top of these physical copies that I have here, I read a few ebooks and listened to at least one audiobook. And those were more like autobiographies. I read Different Not Less by Chloe Hayden. I think it's called You Don't Look Autistic at All by Bianca Toeps. And then I listened to the audiobook of Strong Female Character by Fern Brady, and all of those were brilliant. It's so fascinating getting to read autobiographies by other autistic women, because you get to learn, more about experiences that are a lot like your own, but they're not your own. But yeah, I really wish I had a longer list for you guys. If you guys know of any good books that have autistic characters, are written by autistic authors, any good nonfiction, any good autobiographies, please throw those my way, because I will never stop wanting to learn about this. It is part of me and my life and my brain, and I find it fascinating. I also know that Autism Awareness and Acceptance Month is a little rough right now, particularly in respect to the current administration in the US and the way that they talk about that. I don't want to gloss over that and pretend it's not happening, because all of it is really damaging and dehumanizing, but maybe the more people we can get to check out some of these books and check out some lived experiences of actually autistic people, maybe we can fight against that a little bit. Oh, little bonus, let me think. I'm trying to think of autistic characters in movies and TV shows. I don't feel like there are that many, which kind of makes me sad. One right off the top of my head, when I went into my deep dive, before I was actually assessed and diagnosed, I came across Chloe Hayden. I talked about her book. I really liked her book. She is also an actress from Australia, and she plays an autistic character in the Netflix show Heartbreak High. An autistic actress playing an autistic character, so I immediately started watching that show as soon as I heard about that, which is so cool to have, somebody on a TV show that reminds you of yourself when you're someone who doesn't see a lot of that, I guess. There has to be more than that. Of course, there's a lot of characters that, how do they say it, are autistic coded. Like Sheldon Cooper from The Big Bang Theory, he's never explicitly stated to be autistic, but that was a show that my family has watched for years and years and years since I was younger, and I always related to him a lot, and I never knew why. He would have his spot on the couch and freak out when anybody else wanted to sit there, and I was like, hey, I do that. And I know that he presents in a very stereotypical way when it comes to autism, but I still always related a lot to him even before I knew that I was, so I like his character a lot. Anyway, that is all of my books that might be relevant this Autism Acceptance and Awareness Month. And yeah, like I said, if you guys have any recs for me, please throw them my way. I definitely want to keep learning about this. I definitely want to expand my learning about this a little bit more because, like I said, I have deep dived into level 1. And I know the general basics of all of it, but I definitely need to deep dive a little bit more into lived experiences that are more different from my own, just because I want to be more informed and more aware, and I like to make the people around me aware as much as I can, because there is no acceptance without awareness. But yeah, all of that being said, I hope that you guys are having a great week. I hope that you guys are having a great start to your April. As of right now, when I'm recording this, it's actually only March 31st, so April starts tomorrow, but when you guys see this, it will already be April. And yeah, I hope that you guys enjoyed this one, and thank you so much for being here.